There comes a moment in every person's life when they look into the mirror and realize that the greatest obstacle standing between the life they have and the life they dream about is not the economy, not their family, not their circumstances, not even luck. It is the person staring back at them. Let me tell you something. Most people spend years waiting for life to become easier, never realizing that life was waiting for them to become stronger. Think about that for a moment. Imagine two young men leaving the same neighborhood on the same morning. They have the same education, the same amount of money in their pockets, the same opportunities. 10 years later, one has built a remarkable life. The other is still complaining about yesterday. What happened? Was one born under a lucky star? No. Did one receive a magical opportunity? No. The difference was invisible in the beginning. One decided to learn skills. The other decided to make excuses. Here's what most people don't understand. Your future is rarely determined by what you know today. It is determined by what you are willing to learn tomorrow. Every successful person you admire reached a point where they knew less than they know now. They weren't born confident. They weren't born disciplined. They weren't born persuasive. They weren't born financially intelligent. They became those people. And that's encouraging, because if skills can be learned, then your future can be changed. I learned something years ago that completely changed the way I looked at success. Success is not an event. Failure is not an event. Both are habits. You don't suddenly become successful one Friday afternoon. You slowly become successful. Every morning you choose growth over comfort. Likewise, you don't wake up one day and accidentally destroy your future. You slowly trade your dreams for distractions, one unnecessary hour, one postponed decision. One excuse repeated so many times that it begins to sound like truth. That is how average lives are built, not with dramatic failures, but with small neglected choices. Let me ask you a question. If someone secretly recorded every decision you made for the next 30 days, would they predict a successful future? Or would they predict another year exactly like the last one? Think carefully, because your habits are telling a story long before your words ever do. The first skill you must develop is the ability to lead yourself. Most people are trying to lead businesses before they can lead their own emotions. They want to inspire teams, but cannot inspire themselves to wake up an hour earlier. They want financial freedom, but cannot control unnecessary spending. They want extraordinary results while living ordinary routines. Self-leadership begins with a simple promise. Doing what is necessary even when you don't feel like doing it. Motivation is wonderful, but discipline is dependable. Feelings come and go. Commitment remains. Imagine a farmer standing in the middle of a dry field. The sun is burning. The soil looks hopeless. Nothing appears to be growing. Would he quit because nothing happened today? Of course not. He understands something the modern world has forgotten. Growth happens beneath the surface before it becomes visible above the ground. Your character grows the same way. Every page you read, every difficult conversation you choose to have, every temptation you resist, every promise you keep to yourself. Those are roots. Nobody applauds roots. Nobody celebrates roots. But without roots, no tree survives the storm. Here's what most people don't understand. They want fruit without roots, recognition without preparation, confidence without competence, income without value, respect without integrity. Life doesn't work that way. The second skill is learning how to communicate. Communication is more than speaking. It is learning to understand people. It is listening before responding. It is asking better questions. It is making another person feel seen and heard. Some of the biggest opportunities in your life will not come because you had the highest grades. They will come because people trust you. Trust opens doors that talent alone never could. There was an ordinary salesman who struggled for years. He wasn't the smartest. He wasn't the fastest. But every day he studied people, he learned how to listen. He learned how to solve problems instead of simply selling products. Years later, clients followed him wherever he worked. Why? Because people don't remember every word you say. They remember how you made them feel. Skills multiply. Knowledge compounds. Character attracts. The third skill is learning how to think. Notice I didn't say memorizing information. Anyone can collect information. Very few people learn to think. Thinking requires silence, reflection, honesty, the courage to question your own beliefs. Most people spend their lives reacting. Successful people spend their lives evaluating. Before they make a decision, they ask questions. Is this taking me closer to the life I want? Is this temporary pleasure worth permanent regret? Am I choosing comfort or growth? Pain has a strange reputation. Everyone wants to avoid it. But there are two kinds of pain. The pain of discipline and the pain of regret. The pain of discipline weighs ounces. The pain of regret weighs tons. One asks something from you today. The other takes something from you forever. Every morning, life quietly places both options on the table. The choice is yours. And every evening, you live with whichever one you selected. Think about a man who says he wants a better future for his family. He loves them deeply. He truly does. But every evening he spends 5 hours scrolling through endless distractions instead of learning a valuable skill. Does he lack love? No. He lacks direction. Intentions without disciplined action produce the same results as dreams without effort. This is why the people who transform their lives don't simply change goals. They change identity. Instead of saying, I want to read more, they become someone who reads. Instead of saying, I want to become healthier, they become someone who protects their body. Instead of saying, I hope to become successful, they become someone who refuses to stop learning. Identity shapes habits. Habits shape days. Days shape years. Years shape destiny. And here's another lesson that changed countless lives. Protect your attention. Your attention is your greatest investment. Where your attention goes, your future follows. If your attention belongs to fear, fear will become your reality. If your attention belongs to growth, growth will slowly become your identity. Every notification competes for your future. Every distraction asks for a small piece of your potential. The tragedy is that most people give away their attention for free while wondering why their dreams remain expensive. So ask yourself, who owns your attention? Who decides what occupies your mind from sunrise to sunset? Because the quality of your thoughts eventually becomes the quality of your life. And there is another skill that separates people who merely survive from those who continually grow. A skill so simple that many overlook it precisely because it doesn't look dramatic at first. It begins with becoming a lifelong student, someone who walks into every room believing there is still something new to learn, because the moment you think you know everything is the moment your growth quietly begins to slow. Because the moment you think you know everything is the moment your growth quietly begins to slow. Let me tell you something. The world doesn't reward the person who believes they have arrived. It rewards the person who keeps becoming. There is a quiet confidence that comes from knowing you don't have all the answers, but waking up every single day, determined to find one more lesson, one more skill, one more improvement. That is how extraordinary lives are built. Not through giant leaps, through thousands of invisible steps that nobody applauds. Here's what most people don't understand. The greatest competition in your life isn't against another person. It isn't against your coworkers. It isn't against your neighbors. It isn't against someone on social media driving a nicer car or living in a bigger house. The greatest competition is between the version of you that chooses comfort today and the version of you that could exist 5 years from now. Every decision casts a vote. Every habit casts another vote. Every morning you either strengthen your future or strengthen your excuses. There was once a young man who desperately wanted success. He attended every seminar he could afford. He watched every motivational video. He filled notebooks with quotes. His shelves were covered with books, yet year after year, nothing changed. One afternoon he asked an older mentor, "Why isn't my life improving? I know so much." The mentor smiled and asked him a strange question. "When was the last time your calendar changed because of what you learned?" The young man stayed silent. The mentor continued, "Knowledge that doesn't change your schedule cannot change your future." Think about that for a moment. It is possible to know everything about discipline and still live a life controlled by laziness. It is possible to understand the importance of exercise while never stepping into a gym. It is possible to read books about financial freedom while continuing to spend money on things that lose value the moment you buy them. Information is not transformation. Allocation is. The bridge between your dreams and your reality is built with action, brick after brick, decision after decision, day after day. You see, successful people have something in common that isn't obvious from the outside. They protect ordinary days. Anyone can stay focused for one afternoon. Anyone can feel motivated after hearing an inspiring speech. But what happens on a quiet Tuesday morning when nobody is watching? What happens when your alarm clock rings and your bed feels warmer than your purpose? What happens when your friends invite you toward comfort while your future calls you toward sacrifice? That is where your life quietly changes direction. Destiny rarely announces itself. It whispers. It hides inside ordinary moments. You don't become remarkable because of what you do once. You become remarkable because of what you refuse to stop doing. Here's another skill that can completely transform your future. Learn how to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. Most people organize their lives around avoiding discomfort. If a conversation feels difficult, they avoid it. If learning a new skill feels frustrating, they quit. If failure becomes embarrassing, they stop trying. But every meaningful achievement lives on the opposite side of discomfort. Confidence is uncomfortable before it becomes natural. Leadership is uncomfortable before it becomes effortless. Discipline is uncomfortable before it becomes identity. Growth always asks for a price before it offers a reward. Imagine walking into a gym for the first time. Everything feels unfamiliar. You compare yourself to everyone else. Your muscles ache after a single workout. Part of you wants to leave. Now imagine quitting because of that first day. You would never experience the strength waiting on the other side. Life works exactly the same way. The beginner feels awkward. The learner feels uncertain. The student feels slow. But those who stay long enough eventually become the people others admire. Here's what most people don't understand. The people you admire once struggled with the very things you're struggling with today. The confident speaker once feared standing in front of 5 people. The successful entrepreneur once doubted whether anyone would buy from them. The skilled writer once stared at a blank page. The disciplined athlete once fought the temptation to stay in bed. Nobody skips the beginning. Everyone earns their progress. That should encourage you, because if they earned it, so can you. I learned something years ago that has stayed with me ever since. Your excuses are often nothing more than your fears wearing convincing disguises. Listen carefully to the voice inside your head. It says things like, "I'm waiting for the right time. I'm not ready. I'll begin next month. What if I fail?" Those don't sound like excuses. They sound reasonable. But underneath every one of them hides fear, fear of criticism, fear of rejection, fear of looking foolish, fear of discovering that success requires more from us than we expected. And fear has an interesting strategy. It doesn't always tell you to quit forever. Sometimes it simply says, tomorrow. Tomorrow becomes next week. Next week becomes next month. Next month quietly becomes another year. One day you wake up wondering where all the time went. Time didn't disappear. It was traded, one comfortable decision at a time. Think about this for a moment. Every successful person and every unsuccessful person receives the same 24 hours. Time is the one resource distributed equally. The difference is not found in the clock. It is found in priorities. Successful people ask a different question. Instead of asking, what do I feel like doing? They ask, what deserves my attention today? That single question changes everything. Because feelings change with the weather. Purpose remains. And once you understand purpose, your schedule begins to reflect it. You stop saying yes to everything. You stop chasing every opportunity. You stop comparing your journey with people who are traveling toward completely different destinations. Comparison is one of the fastest ways to steal gratitude. You can spend your entire life measuring yourself against someone else's chapter 20 while you're still writing chapter 3. That isn't wisdom. That's distraction. Your assignment is not to become someone else. Your assignment is to fully become yourself, to discover the gifts you have ignored, to strengthen the abilities you have underestimated, to develop skills that no one can ever take away from you. Money can disappear. Businesses can fail. Markets can change. Technology can evolve. But a disciplined mind, a valuable character, the ability to solve problems, the ability to communicate with integrity, the ability to learn faster than the world changes, those become assets that follow you everywhere. That's why the wealthiest investment you will ever make isn't in the stock market. It isn't in real estate. It isn't even in your business. The greatest investment is the one staring back at you every morning. Because wherever you go, there you are. If you become more valuable, your opportunities begin to multiply. If you become more disciplined, your confidence begins to grow. If you become more patient, your decisions become wiser. If you become more consistent, people begin to trust you. Success begins to recognize the people who have spent years becoming capable of carrying it. Because success can be dangerous in the hands of someone whose character hasn't grown enough to sustain it. That's why some people receive opportunities they cannot keep. Their income rises faster than their wisdom. Their influence grows faster than their integrity. Their recognition expands faster than their maturity. Eventually, life exposes the gap. So don't pray only for bigger opportunities. Pray for broader shoulders. Don't ask only for greater success. Ask for greater capacity. Become the kind of person who can carry the weight of the future you're asking for, because every new level of life demands a new level of you. And that's where another lesson begins to reveal itself. One that changed the trajectory of countless ordinary people who stopped waiting for perfect conditions and instead made one quiet decision that at first seemed almost too small to matter. Yet over time, that single decision started reshaping not only what they did each day, but how they saw themselves every time they looked in the mirror. Because they finally understood that greatness rarely announces itself with fireworks. More often, it arrives disguised as a decision so ordinary that most people overlook it. A decision to wake up 30 minutes earlier, a decision to read 10 pages instead of scrolling for an hour, a decision to save a little instead of spending everything, a decision to keep a promise to yourself, especially on the days when nobody else would know if you broke it. Let me tell you something. Never underestimate what happens inside a human being the moment they begin trusting themselves again. The first promise you keep may seem small. The second one feels easier. The third begins to build confidence. Months later, people look at you and say, "You've changed." They think it happened overnight. But you know the truth. It happened one promise at a time. Here's what most people don't understand. Self-confidence is not something you find. It is something you earn. Every time you say you're going to do something, and you actually do it, you send a message to your own mind. I can trust myself. That message is more valuable than applause, more valuable than compliments, more valuable than temporary motivation. Because when life becomes difficult, and it will, you won't depend on someone else believing in you. You'll remember the evidence you've built. You'll remember every morning you showed up, every challenge you faced, every fear you walked through. Confidence isn't built by thinking you're capable. Confidence is built by proving it to yourself. Think about a bridge. You don't trust a bridge because someone tells you it's strong. You trust it because it has carried weight again and again and again. Your character is built the same way. It earns trust through repetition, not perfection. Repetition. There was a woman who dreamed of starting her own business. For years, she talked about it. She bought notebooks. She made plans. She designed logos. She imagined the future. But imagination alone never changed her life. One evening, she asked herself a question that most people avoid. What am I pretending not to know? The answer arrived immediately. She already knew the next step. She was simply afraid to take it. That realization changed everything. She stopped planning endlessly. She made one phone call, then another, then another. One client became 3. 3 became 10. Years later, people admired her courage. They never saw the years she spent arguing with her own fear. Success often looks sudden from the outside. From the inside, it is usually a long conversation between your dreams and your doubts. And every day one of them wins. Which voice are you feeding? Because whatever you feed becomes stronger. Feed your excuses, and they become convincing. Feed your discipline, and it becomes dependable. Feed your curiosity, and opportunities begin to appear where others see obstacles. Feed your gratitude, and even difficult seasons begin to teach you something valuable. I learned something years ago that I wish every young person could understand. Your environment quietly shapes your expectations. Spend enough time around people who complain, and complaining begins to sound normal. Spend enough time around people who settle, and settling begins to feel reasonable. Spend enough time around people who laugh at ambition, and eventually you'll apologize for having dreams. Be careful. Normal is contagious. So is excellence. That is why you must choose your influences with the same care you choose your destination, because every conversation is planting something. Some conversations plant courage. Others plant fear. Some relationships water your potential. Others slowly drain it. You cannot expect extraordinary growth while constantly surrounding yourself with people who celebrate mediocrity. That doesn't mean you stop loving people. It means you stop allowing limited thinking to become your future. Here's another skill that can completely transform your life. Learn to ask better questions. Most people ask, why is this happening to me? Successful people ask, what is this trying to teach me? Most people ask, why am I so unlucky? Successful people ask, where is the opportunity hidden inside this difficulty? Most people ask, when will life get easier? Successful people ask, how can I become stronger? Notice the difference. The circumstances may be identical. The questions are not. And your questions determine the direction of your thinking. Your thinking determines your decisions. Your decisions determine your future. Everything begins with the questions you repeatedly ask yourself. Think about this for a moment. Imagine 2 people losing the same job on the same day. One spends the next 6 months blaming the economy. The other spends 6 months learning new skills. One loses hope, the other gains value. One waits, the other prepares. 5 years later, their lives look completely different. Not because life treated them differently, because they responded differently. Life is constantly asking one question. Who are you becoming through what you're going through? Not what happened to you. But what are you becoming? That changes everything, because hardship is never just an obstacle. Sometimes it is training. Sometimes rejection is direction. Sometimes delay is preparation. Sometimes the closed door is protecting you from walking into a room that was too small for the person you're capable of becoming. But you'll never see that if your eyes remain fixed on what you lost instead of what you can still build. Let me tell you something. Some of the strongest people you'll ever meet did not become strong because life was easy. They became strong because they stopped asking life for comfort and started asking life for wisdom. Every challenge became a classroom. Every mistake became a teacher. Every disappointment became another reason to develop resilience. Resilience is a remarkable quality. It cannot be purchased. It cannot be borrowed. It cannot be inherited. It must be developed. And it grows every time you refuse to quit after a setback. There is a reason diamonds are valuable. Pressure. There is a reason great leaders inspire others. Responsibility. There is a reason extraordinary character is rare. Consistency. The qualities everyone admires are built through experiences that most people try to avoid. That's the paradox of growth. The things that shape you rarely feel pleasant while they're happening. The workout burns. The lesson humbles. The sacrifice feels lonely. The waiting tests your patience. Yet years later, those very moments become the foundation of everything meaningful you've built. Imagine climbing a mountain. Halfway up, you look down. The road seems impossibly far away. Your legs ache. The wind pushes against you. Part of you wonders if turning back would be easier. Then something incredible happens. You take one more step, then another. The mountain doesn't disappear. You simply become stronger than the climb. That is how life works. Your obstacles don't always become smaller. You become bigger. You become wiser. You become calmer. You become more capable. Until one day, the challenge that once terrified you becomes something you handle with quiet confidence. And people ask, how did you become so strong? They don't realize strength was never the goal. Showing up was. Strength was simply the reward for refusing to stop. Here's what most people don't understand. Your greatest breakthroughs are often preceded by your greatest temptation to quit. That is why so many people miss the life they were meant to build. They stop one chapter too early. They give up one lesson before understanding it. They walk away one step before the path begins to open. So when you feel resistance, don't immediately assume you're going the wrong way. Sometimes resistance is evidence that you're finally moving in a direction that matters. Sometimes the discomfort you're experiencing isn't a warning to retreat. It's proof that you're growing beyond the limits of the person you used to be. And when you begin to recognize that difference, you start approaching every difficult morning, every uncertain season, every unanswered question with a different mindset altogether, because you realize that the next skill you must develop has very little to do with talent and everything to do with the quiet art of remaining faithful to the process long before the results give you any reason to believe. Because the process has a way of testing your commitment before it ever rewards your effort. Let me ask you something. Who are you when nobody is applauding? Who are you when the room is empty? Who are you when the only voice encouraging you is your own? That answer matters more than any title you will ever hold, because character is revealed in private long before it is recognized in public. The world sees the performance. You live the preparation. And preparation has a language all its own. It speaks through early mornings, through unfinished notebooks, through quiet practice, through saying no to temporary comfort, because you have said yes to a future that nobody else can see yet. Here's what most people don't understand. The future always belongs to those who can see it before they can touch it. Every inventor had to believe before the invention existed. Every builder had to imagine before the foundation was poured. Every great leader had to carry conviction long before anyone else followed. Vision is the ability to stay committed to a destination that has not yet become visible. That is a skill. And like every valuable skill, it must be trained. There will be days when nothing around you confirms that you're making progress. No promotion, no recognition, no dramatic breakthrough. Just another ordinary day. Those are the days that separate dreamers from builders. Dreamers work when inspiration visits. Builders work because purpose has already moved in. Think about the seasons of nature. A tree does not panic because winter arrives. It doesn't stand in the cold asking, "Why isn't there fruit today?" It understands something profound. Every season has a purpose. Winter strengthens. Spring prepares. Summer grows. Autumn reveals. Human life follows the same rhythm. Yet so many people judge their entire future based on one difficult season. They experience one setback and conclude that nothing will ever change. One rejection convinces them they aren't good enough. One failure becomes a permanent identity. No, it was an event, not your identity. Failure is something that happens. It is not someone you become. Never confuse the two. I once met a man who had lost nearly everything. His business collapsed. His savings disappeared. His confidence was shaken. People who once called him every week suddenly became too busy to answer the phone. He told me something I'll never forget. He said, "I thought I had lost my future, but what I had actually lost was an illusion. I confused what I owned with who I was." Think about those words. Many people build their identity on things that can be taken away. A paycheck, a title, a position, the approval of others. And when those things disappear, they feel empty. But if your identity is rooted in your character, if it is rooted in your values, if it is rooted in your willingness to learn, adapt, and grow, then even when life strips away everything on the outside, there is still something powerful standing on the inside. That is why skills are so valuable. Nobody can confiscate your ability to think clearly. Nobody can steal your discipline. Nobody can bankrupt your integrity. Nobody can take away the wisdom earned through years of experience. These are treasures that appreciate with time instead of depreciating. Here's another lesson worth carrying with you. Learn to delay gratification. We live in a world that promises instant everything. Instant entertainment, instant delivery, instant success, instant recognition. But life continues to reward those who are willing to wait. The farmer does not dig up the seed every morning to see if it has grown. He understands that constant impatience destroys what consistent patience creates. How many dreams have been abandoned simply because they took longer than expected? How many businesses closed 1 month before the breakthrough? How many books remained unwritten because the first chapter wasn't perfect? How many relationships ended because growth required more patience than pride was willing to offer? Patience is not passive. Patience is disciplined confidence. It is the decision to keep watering the seed even when the field still looks empty. Let me tell you something. The greatest rewards in life are usually hidden behind the greatest delays. Not because life enjoys making you wait, because waiting develops the capacity to appreciate what is coming. Imagine giving the responsibilities of a great leader to someone who has never learned self-control. Imagine handing enormous wealth to someone who has never developed wisdom. Imagine placing influence into the hands of someone who still needs constant approval. The gift would become the burden. Preparation protects you from that. Every delay asks one question. Are you becoming the person who can carry what you're asking for? That's a powerful question. Because sometimes we're so focused on receiving that we forget the responsibility of sustaining. Receiving success is